So in the last video, we covered the Yaesu FTM 400 XDR amateur radio and all of its features and capabilities. But I thought I would go into a little bit more depth on one in particular. If you recall, we talked briefly about APRS and what it does as far as sending out beacons from the radio that really convey your location and geographical information. And so what I thought I would do is come onto the computer here and show you this particular website that displays all of the APRS nodes across the United States. You actually can zoom out and see other countries as well. But right now we're zoomed out so you can see all of the United States, and you can see the density of APRS devices, radios, repeaters, weather stations across the United States. You can notice in the Midwest that it's very sparsely populated, but if you look along the East Coast and along the West Coast, it is more densely populated with devices. And so as we zoom in, you're going to see a little bit more of those details. Okay, if you recall, we talked about APRS on the radio and what it can do. We talked about the beaconing feature of APRS. And again, what beaconing does is the radio, since it has built-in GPS, uses a APRS feature or technology to send out a beacon that reports its location. If you come into a computer and you go to aprs.fi, it will open up a Google map. And you can, just like with Google Map, you can drag and drop and zoom in and zoom out. But it shows you all of the stations that are reporting APRS. If we click on each one of these stations, it will show us a little bit of information about them. It'll show you the call sign of them. And also based on the icon, you can determine a little bit about the station just by looking at it. Obviously, the WXs are weather stations, and so if we click on each one of those, it'll show you the report date. It'll show you, you can actually see weather charts, you can see the temperature, humidity, the wind, any rain that has happened over the last 24 hours. And if we click on it, it will show us a little bit more information. It'll show us the exact location and GPS coordinates. And then some relative bearings from various cities in the area. It'll show you the last position, the last weather report time. Obviously, this weather station is stationary, so it's always going to report from the same station. So let's jump back over here. And you can see some of these others. The one I'm going to be talking about is just like this vehicle here. And the route that it's leaving, the little tail. So if we go over here and we type in my call sign, which is KN4HES, and we search for it, it's going to show us the last time that this call sign reported in, which was 6 days ago. That was last week. We took a trip over to the Talladega National Forest. It'll show you the comment that I've got on the radio, which is our website, and then also that I'm monitoring 146.152 megahertz. Now what we can do is we can actually click on our call sign, and it's going to display that on the map for us. It's going to give us the information about it from the last time that it received a beacon. It's actually showing us here our last hour and the tail length of an hour. And as we zoom in here, it will actually show us our route. And so one of the things I want to do is I want to go over here and I want to show the last, let's do 6 hours. And I also want to make the tail length 6 hours. And now if we look at the screen, and let me zoom out just a little bit here. we can actually see the last 6 hours of a route. And so again, we were coming over here out of East Atlanta, Northeast Atlanta, but again, in the last 6 hours, this is what it reported. Actually, we could change this to 12 hours so we can see the full route. And this is from the point where I turned the radio on in the vehicle. So I didn't actually start the radio up as soon as we got in the vehicle and left from the house. It was probably 20 to 30 minutes later where I actually turned the radio on. And each one of these points, the red dots along the route, is where a beacon was sent and received. There are certain repeaters that pick up the APRS signal. And one thing you will note is that there are some areas where it's not going to be exact, and there may have been a place along the route where either we were not getting very good reception, it was sending out the beacons, but the beacons were not being heard by a repeater or anything. And so we may have these gaps where there's just a straight line. But it's still fairly accurate. If you were trying to locate us, you could have fairly easy way to find out exactly where we're at. Here's another long strip, but you see as we start getting closer over into the Talladega National Forest, which is over here, there is a repeater on the top of this antenna that all of these pings were going to for the most part. The radio, again, has a beaconing feature. The default sends out like every 5 minutes, and that would be like if you're in a stationary location. You could probably actually extend that time frame out a little bit further, because since the station's not moving, you don't necessarily need to report your position as often. You can change that. The feature, or the radio has a feature called smart beaconing that will be based on the movement of the vehicle. Again, since it has GPS built into it, it tracks your location, it knows how fast you're moving, whether you make turns, you're going up in elevation or down in elevation. And so, again, when you're in fairly close to a repeater, you're going to see that at that point it really starts to pick up, and it does a pretty good job of keeping us on the route or displaying it on the map. As you can see, again, it didn't really follow the route, but we did go over to this small town over here to gas up, make a pit stop, grab a couple of supplies, and then we came back, and this is actually where we turned to go into the Talladega National Forest on the Forest Service roads. And this is actually County Road 601, or actually is that 6001. And you can see it did a fairly good job of sending the beacons out and keeping us on the route. Here's a very good example. So there was a scenic overlook right about here, and we actually did a little backtracking. We went past it and we turned around and came back to that scenic overlook. So again, it's not exact, but again, the main reason for choosing this particular radio with this feature was in the case of an emergency, that first responders, or anyone else for that matter, would have a fairly good time of locating our position based on this. Again, having the ability to be able to call out for help is one thing, but then having responders that can look at this data to find out exactly where you're at is going to be invaluable. There may be areas where you're in a place where the roads are not named, are not marked, or maybe you got lost and you're on a road that you weren't intending to be on. Having this feature available, again, is going to be invaluable. Each of the dots, again, if we click on one of them, again, it does show us our call sign. The -9 denotes that we are mobile. It shows the report time. It shows how fast we were going, the degrees we were heading, and then also our altitude. And then also the comment that I've got on the radio again, our website, and then that we're monitoring 146.152 megahertz. We can click on it again. It'll show us our information. It'll show us our exact lat long. We can show it on the map, and it'll also show us some references to local cities in the area, how far away we are, the reporting position time, dates, and again, all of the information, course altitude, speed, the device itself, and the path that it took to report that position out. So as you can see, again, it kept fairly well to the road on the map here. We did go up into Cheaha State Park. We drove around the loop. You can also see this is the tower up in the state park, and this is the highest point in Alabama. We actually did pull up in there and stop for just a little bit we knew that we were not going to be off-road anymore, so we went ahead and aired up and also put the quick disconnects back on the front of the vehicle. And it's probably at this point here that I actually turned the radio off. We were back onto a main highway here. We were fixing to get on the interstate in just a few miles, so I went ahead and cut the radio off for us. But that's a good overview of APRS. There's a lot of features out there. This particular website, you can link to it from your site. You can also embed this map into your website. So if you wanted a page or to be able to share your location with friends or family or anyone that's following you, there's a couple of parameters you can set, and then you can embed this into your website, or you can actually copy this link out and post that so people can follow you. And it makes it very good for cross country, again, just for people to keep up with you, and more importantly for first responders to be able to find you in case of an emergency.